when do you all think that people will finally get
Now
that
get
DC
in here.
isn't meant to be overly dark? Do you think Snyder's vision did more harm than good to the DC brand as a whole? Because honestly, with me, yes, you have those shows that have darker tones. Arrow had darker tones, but still had, those, like those bright spots. But it generally worked because it was a serious vigilante-esque story. Flash did dark tones, but it was mainly a light story, if you get what
Right.
I mean, like by that. Even Superman and Lois was a grounded take on Superman in his later years with his family. The final season was literally almost like they did a whole cancer storyline the year before, then they followed it up with killing this man after he just thought he was gonna lose his wife, but they had bright spots. But people seem to be under the assumption that DC is meant to be dark, that it's supposed to be dark and gritty, as opposed to Marvel, just being the bright spot. But they're forgetting that Marvel has written stories where MJ, where Mary Jane dies because of her and Peter getting it on over the years, and him basically, poisoning her. So I'm like, what do you guys think about that whole like contrast in like people's thinking of what it really means for DC and what it means for Marvel? Do you think Snyder did more damage to the brand, or do you think it's just what people expect?
That's a good question, man. Like,
That, yeah.
I look back at it now, and I'm surprised. Like, post Man of Steel, I've never seen so many people like thinking that the DC universe was more darker than Marvel. Like, and you look back at it and how even the development with the comics, Marvel was more grounded. They're in New York. They're about Spider Man is Charlie Brown. He can't get anything to work. About the X Men and Prejudice. About the FF and space and whatnot. Like they were always more grounded than DC. DC was more fantastical. It was more of the brighter stuff. It was the legacy stuff, the passing of torches more. And I don't know. Like to me, I go yes and no. Yes, because for a lot of people now, they still harping on that iteration of Superman, and they can't let it go to give another movie a shot before it even comes out. So people are ready to burn that thing to the ground, and that's the whole generation, I think, of people with that mentality. So, but I can't fully put that on Zach because Zach was trying to tell his story. He was just trying to give his interpretation of the character and whatnot. And I said I like Man of Steel. I don't love it. I like BVS. I don't love it. And I as a fan appreciate the stuff I know from comics, but I always thought of it as a Elseworlds angle. Like it's a way to the whole deconstruction stuff. That's a way to approach a story, and I'm here to check it out. But I wouldn't start a universe like that for me. And like when Superman and Batman are so similar, that's where you're like, where's the contrast? Where's the yin and yang? There's day and night. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a really good question.
Well, at the end of the day, when you look at it, all this stuff outside of comics, like whether it's animated films, films in a current continuity, films in a past continuity, all of that stuff is Elseworlds to an extent. And you know,
Yeah, I agree.
like whenever they make it, it's like Zach. He wasn't trying to give people, oh, here's like how you should always say Superman. This is the Superman adaptation. No one has really tried to do that. People will take different interpretations and kind of perceive it as that for them. Like they'll resonate with one over another and say, okay, this is the one that resonates with me, or that is the one that resonates with me. People will say, okay, Henry Superman resonates more with me, or Tyler Hoechlin Superman resonates more with me. And it's a whole thing to where people just kind of have their favorites that they gravitate towards, which is a thing that happens in comics too. People have their things that they gravitate towards in comics, and then they have their things that they don't really dive into. So, as far as damaging the brand goes, I wouldn't put that on Snyder himself really at all, because he was one filmmaker that was telling one story. And let's not forget that there were plenty of dark Marvel films too. I mean, you had
Mm-hmm.
you had Blade, you had
Yep.
Logan, you had a bunch of different other ones. So to play it under the notion that just because a lot of the MCU was light and happy, and even then there were a lot of there were a good chunk of mature MCU films. Black Panther, Winter Soldier, just to name
Doctor
a couple.
Strange.
Doctor Strange, definitely. Multiverse of Madness to an extent. And there's not one unified tone that everything has to go under, just like it is in the comics. There's no one unified tone. There's a whole myriad of different things. So you can't really put either one in one box or the other because they have bits of everything.
I agree.
Do you want to go first, Jordan?
Yeah, because I know you have a lot to say.
Yeah, I do.
At the end of the day, there's two things that I know are a part of this question. Number one, not all Snyder fans, because Phil's a Snyder fan, he is looking towards the future to see what is going to happen, but he's being very
I meant the
critical,
cult. I meant the cultists.
I know,
Clearly,
but
yeah.
that's why I'm making a
Yeah.
point, because when I say this, I'm not meaning all.
Yeah.
A lot of Snyder fans will just never let it go.
Nope.
And that's just a fact.
They're
They'll just
stuck.
never let this shit go. They just never will. And they're not really Zack Snyder fans. They're really Zack Snyder DC fans. They don't support him outside
Yeah.
of that, really. A lot of them don't. And it's really sad and pathetic. But you'll never please them. And honestly, James Gunn and whoever comes after James Gunn and Peter Safran to do another version of the DCU or whatever the fuck down the road, they don't need to cater to that audience because they're still going to go watch the movies or in some sort of way watch it. So it doesn't really matter what they're saying online. At the end of the day, general audiences, they just want a story. They just want a product. They just want something they could potentially watch, and they'll judge it based off the marketing and what other people are saying. The fact that it's a comic book, movie, or show is just, it's a comic book, movie, or show.
Yeah.
They just want a story. They don't really care. So as long as they're trying to tell a cohesive narrative, that's what really should matter. As long as James Gunn and Peter Safran are putting out content that is resonating with people, that's what really matters. If it's successful, great. If it's not, maybe you need a course correct. But it doesn't really matter what certain people online are saying or not saying. It doesn't matter because they need to focus on the bigger pictures of what they were doing. Because when James Gunn came out and said, yeah, when me and Zack Snyder posted that photo, we knew what we were doing. We knew what that was going to cause online because they both know this is kind of ridiculous because they're trying to pin us against each other. They're trying to all this stuff. It's like they're focusing on the bigger picture. There are people online who think they're very important when they say shit online. No, they're fucking not. You're just some dumbass who has a phone. That's what you are. You're not any better than anybody else. So the main focus needs to be what they're working on and not thinking about what like fandom is having an issue with. Who gives a shit? If Superman comes out and makes $600, $700, $800 million, no one's going to give a shit that the Snyder fans that are a part of the cult narrative are screaming and bitching that the movie's a horrible garbage mess. They don't give a shit. They don't care. So that's really what it is.
No, I get it. I get it. Sure.
Yeah.
Phil, I hope you drank some water before this.
Well, I think there's a couple ways you can answer that question. In terms of the brand, DC as a whole, no. I would say no. And I would point to not even anything in the DCU. I would point to Watchmen. That movie, given the test of time, has aged like fine wine
Oh yeah.
and has
I agree. I
shown
agree.
the breadth of what DC is truly capable. And honestly, just look at comparatively at the brands themselves. DC Comics, what does that stand for? Detective Comics. What are detective stories usually centered around? Mystery, murder, you name it. Like it is inherently darker. Yeah, you've got
Hey, guys.
characters like Superman and Flash and
I'm hopping
a bunch
up
of other
a bit.
characters.
Okay.
For sure, dude. Thanks.
See you, man.
Like you've got characters like Flash, Superman, Green Lantern. You know, these are characters who are inherently lighter than the likes of Batman, John Constantine, fucking Green Arrow. You know, like there's a blend of both in DC, and then you also get to Marvel. Same deal. Yeah, you know, the logo is red. It's Poppy, your titular character. Like, let's face facts. Like the iconic DC character is Batman. The iconic Marvel character is Spider-Man.
Yep.
Two
Yep.
diametrically different characters. One is a grounded detective. The other one is a super powered superhero doing the right thing in Queens, barely scraping by. They are literally doing what they do best with what they can and what they have. Now, as far as like a quality perspective, I think to Chainsaw's point, yeah, I think at the end of the day, people just want a good story.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think like when it specifically comes to the DCEU and it comes to, at the time, people were so engrossed by what Marvel was doing. It didn't help that Civil War was coming out the same year because people were on that Marvel hype bandwagon of we want interconnected universe. We want the next chapter. We want this chapter to forward the next chapter.
Yeah.
You get to Batman versus Superman, which is coming off the heels of Man of Steel. People rejected the fuck out of that movie, even though comparatively to a lot of the stuff in the MCU, Phase 3 forward, this might be a hot take. I think Batman v Superman is a much better made movie than either Endgame or Infinity War. That's just me. Like I think the narrative is tighter. I think the villain is far more motivated. I think and well written, to be brutally honest. I think like that movie is just inherently a better made movie, but that's no knock to the Russos. They made an excellent capper for a 3-part saga. They did it in 2 parts and they made an excellent double feature. It was great. But I think if you look at the quality of the films themselves, you can't sit here and tell me that one frame out of BVS is out of place or looks dodgy or looks kind of skeptical. Because even in Infinity War, which I love, Infinity War is my favorite Avengers movie. There are still shots in that movie where I go, that could have used another pass. There is a single shot when Spider-Man and Iron Man are having a conversation inside the donut ship where Peter's hair literally changes from frame to frame.
Yep.
That's bad editing. That is piss poor editing. I'm sorry. It's true. Movie's still good. But you can't sit here and tell me that Snyder doesn't know how to make a movie look great, because he does. And that goes
He's the
for
king
Army
of
the Dead.
visuals. I will never take that away from him.
100%. And I've seen people lambast him for story, and it's like he didn't write that story alone. He had Chris Terrio writing it with him too, and they retooled that from a draft of David Goyer. David Goyer's script of Batman versus Superman was going to end with Batman branding Lex Luthor, not learning a goddamn thing from the fucking course of the movie. And when it comes to the legacy of things, look at where Marvel's at right now. Their foundation from Phase 4 forward, it's not starting to crumble, but those cracks are showing.
Yeah.
People are not happy. People are not at all happy with what's going on in the MCU. Why are we finally now just getting an Avengers movie? Right? Yeah. That's a big, that in my opinion is what one of Marvel's biggest criticisms and one of their biggest pitfalls is the fact they ended Phase 4 on a Black Panther movie. And that's not a fault to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. That movie is phenomenal. But the fact that Marvel did not end Phase 4 on an Avengers movie, that was a mistake. That was a big mistake. Because
they also dropped the ball with one of their better films, which was Shang-Chi. You left that character is just out there hanging in limbo.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that was complete. That was something new.
Right.
That was something different. That I feel as if that was the shot that the MCU that Disney needed. And it's just like you're not doing anything with that. I get wanting to focus on your bigger branded IPs, your Spider-Mans, your Black Panthers, your Hulks, your Captain Americas. I get that. But Shang-Chi, that was literally one of the best, his episode of What If in this whole horrible last season, that was the best episode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
to your point, storytelling from Man of Steel to BVS to Zack Snyder's Justice League, there is a complete fucking story there. A big, massive graphic novel sized epic. Look, I've often made this case in the last few years that you can look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe as like an ongoing serialized single issue comics that kind of intertwine with each other as the issues go on. What Snyder was doing in terms of his 3 movies, that's a fucking graphic novel.
Because Snyder Cut literally picks up a frame into BVS. It picks up the Superman death.
And BVS, BVS literally opens up where Man of Steel bookends in the 3rd act. Yeah. Literally. Like, I can't stress this enough. I think down the line, people, yeah, there are fewer movies in the DCU, and yeah, Snyder didn't get to finish his story, but on the whole, his 3 movies, quality wise, there's barely a handful in the 40 something Marvel Studios catalog that even come close to those 3 movies, quality speaking.
Yeah. It was maybe
So
like, what,
so
10?
ultimately, like to answer your question, I think Snyder didn't necessarily damage the DC brand. I think that fans have pissed in the pool, and that's kind of damaged the brand. And to
Right.
Chainsaw's earlier point about people listening to fans, that's where they fucked up. That's where Warner Brothers fucked up with
Right.
Justice League. They listened and caved to people they should not have caved to. They did not follow the money. They followed the critics. They followed the Rotten Tomato score, and that's where they fucked up.
I mean, and
I agree.
at the end of the day, too, there's 2 things here. I want to go back to your point about what you were talking about with those kind of Marvel cracks. One of the biggest reasons people aren't happy now, we're almost 6 years past the most recent Avengers movie. We're a year and a half out from the next one. We still don't know who the
Which is
Avengers
crazy.
are. So
That's a problem.
that uncertainty still in the air at this point is a bad thing. It was thought that Captain America was going to resolve a little bit of that and maybe, give us a little bit to go off there. Didn't really do that. They said, hey, we want to, rebrand the Avengers. Cool. We didn't really get more than that. And to the whole point on the DC side, people were saying, did Snyder damage the brand? Here's a newsflash for you guys. Snyder is one singular filmmaker. He is one filmmaker who was telling a story. All those, films in the MCU that, contain your guys' favorite characters that you guys don't like, did you guys say, oh, well, they, damage the brand, things like that? Because, for me personally, and like
Just
fellas,
real quick, just to add to that really fast, because you just made me think of something. If Zack Snyder really damaged the brand so much, then why the fuck was the DCEU more profitable when he was attached to it as opposed to when he was not? That's not damaging a brand, because if your brand is damaged, you don't make money. And those movies, Man of Steel, BVS, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, yes, even the studio cut, and Aquaman, they all made fucking money.
Yeah. And no film past Aquaman was a profit.
Nope.
Joker doesn't count. It was an independent thing.
Correct.
Yeah. Elseworlds.
And to that whole thing too about, did people complain whenever like one specific filmmaker did something in the MCU and then claim that one, filmmaker damaged the brand? You don't hear anyone say that. But because it's the popular thing to just dunk on what Snyder did with DC, you'll have people jumping on that bandwagon, whether or not they actually believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, to add to all of that before we wrap up, I asked that question because I'm seeing all of this. I'm honestly, I'm tired of seeing the online discourse. I miss how it used to be. I miss when we welcomed change. We were excited for what's to come, and not everybody. We have our circle. We're ready for anything. Me personally, a lot of people would say that I didn't know. I liked Snyder. I was excited for the DCEU. What people need to understand and what they continue to fail to understand is the difference between James Gunn and Zack Snyder. James Gunn is not just a singular director that's put in charge of, directing these films. Zack Snyder was a director of several films. Do I feel as if that they put a lot on his plate and didn't give him full control? 100%. They treated him like he was the CEO of the DCEU, when in reality he was just one director that they were literally just, they were playing puppet master with. Like, for them to be able to come in and just snip up movies, ask you dumb questions like why can't Superman go back home after you just saw his planet get blown up? Like they didn't know what they were doing. What they have done with James Gunn, and which is smart, and trust me, David Zaslav does not do smart. He does not make smart decisions at all. Giving James Gunn full reign, making a DC Studios, was the smartest thing that they have ever done.
100%.
But it could have been done years ago. It's the proper course correction, but it should have been done years ago. Yes, Zack Snyder, he had a vision, but you're putting him in charge of what, like flat out like 3 movies back to back to back. You're
Yeah.
coming in, you're putting your hand in the pot where it does not need to be. You did the same thing. Arguably, you did the same thing to David Ayer.
Yep.
And honestly, his Suicide Squad would have been great. Yes, they have their pitfalls with some of the interpretations of the characters, like Jared Leto's Joker, and all of that stuff. I didn't care for Jesse Eisenberg's Lex that much at all, but I mean that was Lex Jr. or whatever. So I didn't too much care for him. But I will always say this: if Zach, if David, if Patty Jenkins, if they had free reign, if they had the ability to create the films that they envisioned, that they wrote, that they sat down and developed with their entire teams, honestly, we would have had a completed universe. And then we could have moved on seamlessly into the DCU. But now we have all of this discourse. And honestly, James Gunn is taking a brunt of it. And honestly, I think he's taking it with stride, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's not fair. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to Zach that everybody's pitting them against each other. It's not fair that a lot of these people are saying, oh, yeah, oh, man, DC got to be dark. No, it doesn't have to be dark. Just because James Gunn said there's going to be humor in Superman, you looked at that first trailer and said, oh, man, this is going to be an MCU laugh fest. What in that trailer told you that?
Watch Creature Commandos and tell me that's lighthearted.
Exactly. A Superman that's bloodied and battered on the ground. That's what told you that. Oh,
you know what I really like about him doing the DCU is the fact that he's not trying to make everything feel like Marvel Studios, and how Marvel Studios has to adhere to like a similar tone across the board for the most part, where certain projects may diverge, but on the whole, they still just adhere to this, tonal formula that has just become accustomed to the MCU. No, Creature Commandos is everyone on this panel knows I'm fairly critical of James Gunn as a creative individual. Yep. They can all attest to this. I love Creature Commandos. I think Creature Commandos was pretty fucking cool, all things considered, right?
Yep.
But does it surprise me that he come out and said Superman's going to have humor? No. Want to know why? Because that's part of his wheelhouse. That's what he does. May not make me laugh, but I get why he's going for it. Of course, if you were going to go into this movie not expecting humor, you were kidding yourself. You were fucking kidding yourself. Because let's face it, you've got a character like Lombard, you've got a character like Guy Gardner in this movie. You've even got Lex Luthor's henchman Otis in here. Come on. There's going to be humorous moments with some of these characters.
Oh, probably Crypto even.
Right, Crypto. He put fucking this Crypto the super dog in the goddamn movie.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that
people are mad about that. I'm like, I don't get
that.
I don't get it.
Here's something that'll make you laugh. I don't know if you saw this, but someone on the Rogan podcast, I don't really listen to it, but I saw this clip making the rounds. Someone asked Rogan, hey, you going to go see the new Superman movie? He goes, what, with the fucking super dog? Hell no. Then, not even 10 minutes later in the same podcast, someone's like, but dude, it's James Gunn. And they're talking about Guardians. And Joe Rogan's like, oh yeah, he made me give a fuck about the raccoon. And it's like, oh, okay, so you can give a shit about a talking raccoon, but the minute a dog wears a fucking cape and flies, that's where you draw the line.
You can't pick and choose that shit. You can't.
It's just, it to me just really feels like it's, this isn't specifically on Rogan, but it echoes a lot of other people's like purview of this shit. They go, oh, I liked his Guardians movies, but fuck him and his DC stuff. And it's like, look, I didn't like Guardians 2 at all. I think that movie's not great. And Guardians 3, the biggest sin of that is Adam Warlock. But still, on the whole, like that unit of people, they work. The chemistry between them is good. Rocket Raccoon is one of the best characters ever created in the last fucking decade.
Yeah.
Like he's Han Solo as a raccoon. What more do you fucking want?
And let's not forget his James Gunn Suicide Squad film. Yes, it's in his wheelhouse of how he writes R-rated films. And yes, it was released during COVID. Was it going to make a butt ton of money? No. People were I got sick going to see that movie. So people trying to use that as to say, oh, it flopped. No, it did not flop. During COVID, everybody loved that movie. That movie was good. Like you're killing off characters that nobody expected anybody to kill off. You brought back some of the original characters from the first Suicide Squad film. And you killed off Boomerang. You killed off Jai. You brought him back for 5 minutes to kill him off. And then you made a cohesive story. You gave us Starro on the big screen. And people are saying like, oh, yeah, James Gunn is going to ruin this movie. He gave us Starro on the big screen. Like
COVID
seriously.
was one of the things that hurt that film, but also the fact that they released it to streaming the same day is a big part of what hurt it too.
Yeah,
So,
that's how I was able to react to it
was-
on the channel
people
because
that
it was
was
on
not-
HBO Max.
That was such a
It was
mixed bag of an idea to follow through with, because
Yeah.
it benefited some other movies and then it kind of hindered other movies. Case
Yeah.
in point, the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
I think the movie is well made. It's not my favorite of the DCEU for many reasons that we don't have the time to discuss, and honestly, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But yeah, like Lance isn't wrong in anything he just said. Hell, I saw that movie a week early for free in the middle of COVID. So
Yeah, I'm like y'all judging this man. Everybody has had, nobody just has like just amazing ideas. Like you're not gonna like what I'm trying to. You're not gonna like every idea that somebody has. But
Right.
for you guys to get mad at saying, "Oh my God, look at Corn Sweat's body." First of all, the guy got jacked for the film. Realistically, even if you put a suit on a muscular person, the muscles aren't going to protrude out of the suit like they would in a comic book drawing, because that's not how anatomy works. That's not how clothing works.
that's not how adaptions work.
You're dealing with real people here.
Yeah, I'm like, and people say, "Oh man, why does he have the trunks?" Because canonically, Superman wears trunks. He's wearing trunks right now. So what does that say to me? You're not a comic book fan. Like at all. You can say, "Oh man, the trunks look terrible," but I just saw you posting about when Tyler Hoechlin wore them for when he wore the Flash suit, and you said, "Oh my God, this looks so great." Cavill was gonna wear the trunks originally. Gunn did not want trunks, but then you get mad at him because he said David wanted them, and he just wanted to please the guy that's portraying his Superman. How you gonna fault the man on giving an actor what the actor wanted? Like it doesn't make sense. Talking about he looks bloated in these promo photos. But Christopher Reeve, Brandon Routh, they did not protrude out of their suits.
No,
But you
no, they
guys
did not.
didn't have nothing to say back then.
Right.
You guys got spoiled by what Zack Snyder did with his suit designs. You got spoiled by that. You think all Superman suits are supposed to be alien technology. They're not.
Far be it for these filmmakers to try and actually please their actors and make them happy during the process of filming. Because if you don't actually try to make your actors happy during the process of filming, you just hypothetically, let's say that the studio wanted to just, shit all over the actors, give them a terrible time in this DC universe and not make any of them want to come back. Oh, wait. We don't have to hypothesize. That happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I don't know, man.
It's just weird. I just want people to stop and just like just think logically for a moment. You're calling for the downfall of, and now they're not just saying they want this to flop so Snyderverse could come. They want it to flop so it'll be nothing at all.
It's like you Harvey Dent, The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. You people are literally turning into the thing you fought against to get the Snyder Cut released. Hello? Like, grow the fuck up. Grow up. It's that kind of dipshit mentality. Like, you can't sit there and be mad at people for like, bitching and crying about Zack Snyder on Twitter. Believe me, I spent so much time when I was there defending and fucking arguing with people, critics and noobs alike, about why Snyder should have been given more free reign and opportunity to do what he wanted to do. And yet I got the same shit all the time. Hack director, not like the MCU. You fucking name it, dude. I had every single criticism thrown at my face. And now I'm like, well, he's moved on. James Gunn's the head of DC. At least DC's still a fucking thing. It's out of the grasp of Warner Brothers. I'm going to see what happens next. I look at that slate and I go, there's certain things on that slate that I'm looking forward to. There's certain things I'll watch. And then there are certain things where I'm just like, no, I'm good.
But you're not hung up on the past because it's not your favorite guy doing it.
100%. Want to know why? Because the guy who did my favorite shit, He's moved on doing other shit too. Met him in person. My nerd cred, my nerd card, when it comes to that stuff, I got the stamp that I wanted. I am no longer going to be bitter about 2 movies that are not probably going to happen anytime soon. It's pointless.
Yeah.
Was I disappointed that Henry Cavill wasn't coming back as Superman? Yeah. I got the fuck over it though. I can't wait to see this new Superman trailer whenever the fuck it debuts, probably at CinemaCon.
Yeah.
I'm game for it because I want to see these characters interact. I want to see how they sound. I want to see the conveyance in their voices. I want to see how they interact with each other. I want to see Superman talk to Guy Gardner. I want to see Mr. Terrific. I want to see all of them and how they interact. Like that teaser did exactly what it needed to do. I think it was very smart in not having anyone say a fucking word except Superman going, "Crypto, take me home."
Yep, that's it.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
Well done.
And I'm honestly glad. I'm glad Gunn is taking his time. That was a huge problem with the DCU. That was a huge problem. Not even with the DCEU. That was a huge problem with Warner Brothers back in the day. Rushing everything, giving us everything at one time. That's not how it works.
Or changing
Which
the
is
plan
why-
because
Changing
something
yep.
is good. Good. Oh, Suicide Squad made the money. Okay, let's do a Harley Quinn. Let's do a Deadshot. Like, shut up, guys, stop.
Yeah.
Focus on
It's
the
no
plan.
reason why the CW should have handled a multiverse better than the big budget studio. Like it doesn't make it that never made sense to me. Your TV stuff
Yeah, no.
is leagues better than your films. And that's because you weren't, of course, it's certain characters that you wouldn't let them use, that you wouldn't let
Right.
the TV shows use, but you weren't actively saying, oh, yeah, you know what? Let's reshoot this, let's redo that. No, because you never, you knew that
Yeah.
they were going to be successful because you knew
Right.
people were going to watch them, but you didn't expect them to take off like they did. You wanted that success.
Yeah.
You wanted that success for the films. So by doing that, you started trying to insert your little promos in announcing the Flash
Yeah.
the night the Flash premieres on TV is diabolical. Because you saw
casting
the
it,
success
yeah.
of Arrow. That's
it's
diabolical.
Well,
It's-
then you get
it's-
to that
it's
whole thing with
tough.
the Flash, where the big budget studio says, "Hey, we know that we're a lot lower than you on the totem pole right now. Can we, the big budget movie studio, can we put our Flash in your crossover, please?" It's like they had to reach
Knowing
out
that
to
it would
them
get
for that.
views.
Yeah, they reached out to them for that because
I would
it's not like Guggenheim or Wolfman or anybody had plans to put that in. They reached out to the people at CW to do that.
I gotta address this comment here. DCU should have never competed with Marvel, which is what I kept saying. They were never trying to compete with Marvel. Doing a Man of Steel would have been that exact thing.
Yeah.
There's a reason
Doing
why
a-
Snyder wanted
a
to do a
sequel.
5-movie story, because that's the opposite of what Marvel was doing. But that's a
Marvel
fucking
wa-
that's a
Marvel
dead
was
horse
trying
of
to-
conversation.
Marvel was trying to do this. Snyder was trying to do that.
Yep.